Alright guys, my name's Kyle, as you know, and this week is How I Knew I Was Trans Week. Now before I start talking about how I knew I was trans, I do want to tell you guys that everyone on this channel is different, so we may not have the same way of finding out we were trans. We may not know at the same age. We may, you know what I mean? We may not have realized it at the same time. Also, you guys are different. You guys didn't realize it at the same time. You could have realized it when you were a child. You could have realized it when you were a teen. You could realize it when you're an adult. It doesn't really matter when you realized it. It just matters that you know who you are. Now, getting into my story, I kind of always knew I was a guy. When I was born, my mom always makes the joke that I was born with a mohawk, because I look like my dad's side of the family, and they're mostly all men. You know, yeah. And I was just so masculine as a child. Like, growing up, I was always masculine. In that theory, because it's only a theory that I was masculine, but I kind of say that I'm masculine because I always dressed masculine when I could. So to me, I'm masculine. In that way, when I was younger, I followed my brother around. I dressed like him. I acted like him. I wanted to be just like him. He was my role model as a kid, and he got really annoyed of it. Trust me. If you could talk to him, he would be like, it annoyed me. And as I started growing older, I kept following him around, kept learning from him. But at the same time, I have a twin sister. We're fraternal, which means we look nothing alike, we act nothing alike, all that good stuff. My family pretended we were identical, dressed us the same, wanted us to act the same. It didn't really work out. I hated pink, I hated dresses, hated all that stuff. But as a young child, I kind of dealt with it because, I mean, they're my parents, they're my family, you know? When I was 4, my parents were like, hey, why don't you try and choose a haircut? And I remember all I wanted was the same hair as my brother, which was a buzz cut, which I got the size buzz recently, and, well, today, and my parents said no, of course. The hairdresser said no, but that was what I wanted. I knew I wanted to be just like my brother. He was everything to me. And so growing up, I just followed him. Whatever he did, I did. And when I was 6, I was able to start dressing myself. And I stopped dressing in, just like my sister, I stopped dressing in dresses and pink, because I hated that. I started dressing more like me. I started wearing shorts down to my knees. I started wearing collared shirts. I liked to look spiffy. It was more gender neutral, more, it was like, I looked like I went to a private school, to be honest. But anyways, and when I was 6, I also knew I was sort of different because I walked in on my brother going to the restroom one time. And I was like, hey, I don't have that, I want that, kind of thing, and yeah, awkward. But I really didn't care. I mean, like, I wanted it, but I was like, you know, he's different from me, I'm different from him, that's okay. And so I really didn't care as long as I could take my shirt off. And I could, because, I mean, as a child, you're flat-chested. So I'd walk around the yard without a shirt on. And I guess it really hit me. It hit me hard when my grandma died in 4th grade. I started getting bullied when she died, or around the time, I should say, because it wasn't like when she died I started getting bullied, but it was that year. And when she died, my mom wanted me to wear a dress to her funeral, and so I begged her not to make me. I begged. But, you know, I was a girl, so I had to look nice, and looking nice for a girl is wearing a dress. And so she told me that if I wore a dress to the funeral and took pictures with the family afterwards in the dress, that I could dress however I wanted afterwards, so I did. That was the deal. The deal was that, or just wear a dress the whole time, and that was more appealing to me than wearing a dress the whole time. And so, after my grandma died, and I started getting bullied, was more when my depression set in, because my grandma was like my best friend. She understood me. She was like everything to me. When she died and I started getting bullied, that's when everything started. I started realizing, hey, the world's not as peachy keen as it seems, you know? When I was in 6th grade, I started really knowing that I was different because I started growing a chest. I started getting my period, and then along with all that, the boys at my school played flag football, like at school, and I wanted to join them. And I remember they told me I couldn't join them because there was no girls allowed. And I remember that day so clearly because I went home and I cried because I didn't understand why I was so different than the boys. I mean, the only thing that was really different was my hair was down here and my body parts. But I didn't know they had different body parts, you know? I mean, I did, but I wasn't sure because you can never be sure. And so I was like, hey, that's not fair. 7th grade, I wasn't really the best. I just kind of, everything was like a haze. I don't really remember much of 7th grade or 8th grade. Now I remember a lot of 8th grade, never mind. But 7th grade I don't remember much of. I basically, PE, while I loved physical activity, I hated the locker room because I had to get dressed by girls. So I just kept my head down, got undressed and dressed, and left as fast as possible. So normally, like, in the first 3 minutes I'd be done. And 8th grade was really, really good, but at the same time, after it was a mess. I got a girlfriend, and she was my first girlfriend, and she was how I knew for sure that I was trans. She started, with her came the compliments, like, you're beautiful, things like that, and anything feminine, I was like, don't call me that, please. And she was polite about it. She didn't care. She still liked me the way I was. And yeah, and we dated for 11 months. And after we broke up was when I got into a deep depression and I started questioning my gender. Like, I'd always questioned my gender in the back of my head, but it started inching forward. It was just like right there in my brain. And my best friend at the time, well, she's still my best friend, but she was like, have you heard the term transgender? I hadn't, because, I mean, I knew I was bi at least, but I'd never heard the term transgender, so I looked it up, and the second I saw the definition, I felt at home. I knew exactly who I was. I knew that was what described me. So, she was the first one to know I was trans. Yeah. That's kind of, so that was beginning of 9th grade. I kind of told, she was the only one who really knew until, till December, because December is when I went to the mental hospital because I was getting bullied pretty severely, like physically and verbally. And I told everyone in the mental hospital to call me Kyle instead of my birth name. And they did. And it was like a social experiment for me because I was like, hey, this makes me feel great. But when I went back to school, that feeling went away because, you know, people. And I got bullied again, all over again, way worse. And I went back to the mental hospital because I wanted to hurt myself again. And that was about the time I came out to everybody, except for my dad, and my sister, and my brother. But I came out to everyone else, and I was like, hey, I'm a guy, call me Kyle. All my friends were accepting, except for a few who weren't really my friends. I don't consider them friends. Now that I look back on it, they were never friends, they were just there. and they were just using me. And so sometimes people aren't your true friends, and yeah, it sucks, but you figure it out. And so after that, I told my mom. I mean, I know I told you, I told everyone, but after I told all my friends, I told my mom. She was accepting, but she still called me her daughter and stuff, and she didn't really change pronouns or use my name, only in a joking way. And when she did joke, I loved it, because I was like, hey, you're calling me Kyle. And so I loved it. And I told my dad a few months later, and my sister. My dad wasn't really accepting, because when I told him I was bi the first time, he told me to get back in the closet till I'm 16. And look at me now, I'm 16 and I'm trans. And so when I told him he wasn't accepting, he yelled at me, but it wasn't that bad, it's okay. And my twin had told me, you're just copying your friend. You're just trying to be cool. So I really didn't feel like I could be myself at home. But I kept up the masculine look, collar shirts, shorts, t-shirts kind of thing, gender neutral masculine. And I started cutting my hair from here to like shorter to like where I could spike it, but it would go like all the way up here. I'm the kind of person that likes to spike hair because I'm me. And so that next year I started at a new school, JFK. I started coming out at school. Well, I did come out at school. I came out to everybody at school. I got mostly accepted. Sometimes I wasn't, but that was okay. I still got bullied there, but not severely. It was only verbal, and so that was good. And while I did have to go back to the mental hospital, I felt at home there, because, I mean, they called me Kyle. They let me be me. And so after I went back to the mental hospital this time, which was my third time and my final time so far, and I hope it's my final time because I don't want to go back, I started being able to dress in men's clothing. Like, I was able to go in the men's section. My mom would let me. And my dad started realizing that I am a man. My mom started realizing, hey, you've got to call me a man. You've got to call me Kyle. You can't call me by my birth name anymore. So we settled with K, because that's the first letter of my name. And yeah. And so we started getting there after the mental hospital, which was in March, this March. And while I do regret trying to kill myself, because that's one of the biggest regrets I have, I also don't, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be where I am. I mean, like, look at me. I'm on track to start T. I'm out at school. I mean, I still get a little bullying because that's happened this week. But I'm out. I'm happy. I have my hair the way I want it for the most part. I'm on track to start my life as a man. And that is the way I want it. So I want to hear your guys' stories. I want to hear what you guys have been through. Have you guys been through similar things, different things? What have you been through? Tell me on Instagram. You can either DM just LGBT stuff and tell me, or you could DM trans minority. Either one. I want to know your guys' journey to knowing that you were trans. Thank you guys, and I hope you guys have a great day. Stay tuned for Junior tomorrow.